Alright, today we're going to be comparing the A7R3 with the A7 IV. This isn't the A7 IV, the A7 IV is actually recording me right now, but this is only going to be the photography side of things. The video side of things, I'm going to make a separate video on it, just because I don't want to make this video too long. But in this video, we're going to be first starting out with the sharpness test. Now, first of all, I don't think the sharpness is that important between these cameras, but the A7R3 does have 42 megapixels, while the A7 IV has 33 megapixels, so it is quite a little bit of a bump. So first we're going to be doing a test at 100 ISO so that we can see in best case scenario which one of these cameras are going to get the sharpest results, which obviously will probably be the A7R3. I doubt it'll be the A7 IV, but later we're going to also test it on high ISO because the A7 IV does have better low light performance. So if you're someone like, for example, if you shoot events or if you shoot weddings where you're constantly bumping up your ISO, then if you get better results with the A7 IV, you might actually get better pictures with it. So we're going to be testing out both of those scenarios to see, and at the end I'm going to be talking about user experience of using both of these cameras, because I think that's where we get a big difference between these two cameras. So make sure to stick to the end, but let's start the video right now. Alright, now we're gonna do everyone's favorite, the brick wall test. This isn't even a brick wall, it's just a wall, but just to determine which one of these cameras get the sharpest results, we're gonna be just using it just to take pictures of texture, just to see which one gets the sharpest possible images. Now to do this, we're using the Sony 85mm f1.8 lens. The reason why we're going with this lens is because this is one of the sharpest lenses for the Sony cameras, and this is the sharpest lens I own, so that's what we're going to be going with. And we're shooting it at the aperture f5.6, just because that is the sharpest aperture that this lens has, so that's what we're going to go with. Hopefully you guys are not hearing this dog that's screaming, and we're shooting at aperture 1/400th of a second, and then ISO 100, just so obviously we can get the cleanest possible images. But we're also gonna be using a self timer just so that when I press the the shutter button, it doesn't create a shake or anything, just so we get the sharpest possible results. So we're just gonna focus using center autofocus, and we're gonna be using the AFS mode just so it's the possible results. So let's focus right now and then take the shot, and right there, and I'm just going to confirm that it is indeed in focus. Let's see, and yes, that's definitely in focus. So now let's put the A7 IV on here and just try to do the same exact shot, and let's see which one is sharper. But again, I don't think it matters that much honestly, but whatever, let's just do it. So I did a bunch of different tests, first shooting in the base ISO at ISO 100, and then I did some tests using the ISO 12800, and then later on I also just tried shooting the images way underexposed and then bring the exposure back up. But honestly, these cameras kind of give you identical results. Like the A7R3 is maybe slightly sharper, like if you zoom in 300%, like it's like a tiny hair bit sharper, but honestly, if you get either of these cameras, as long as the pictures and focus, you'll get great results with it. And even when you go to the high ISOs, they still seem pretty much identical from the tests I have done. So pretty much both of these cameras take great pictures, so I wouldn't really worry about comparing these two cameras. Both of them give you great results. So obviously when it comes to the image quality, I kind of went over it fast because honestly, with both of the cameras, A7R3 and A7 IV, the image quality looks great out of both of them. You don't really have to worry about it. Even when I pixel peeped 300%, I still was struggling to see any differences. Maybe the R3 is slightly sharper because it does have a little bit more megapixels, but that's not something I would worry about. Both these cameras take great pictures. And things if you're doing stills photography, you're photographing people, you're photographing product, landscape, or whatever, you don't have to worry that much about the camera, in my opinion. Most modern cameras nowadays take great pictures. That's why one of my main cameras that I still use to this day is the original A7 camera, because this is a $300 camera that can still take great 25 megapixel images to this day. So it's if I'm just taking pictures of people standing still or products or whatever, why put wear and tear on my better cameras, So that's something I wouldn't worry about. You can still use cameras like Panasonic G7, for example. This is a Micro Four Thirds camera. Still takes great images. You can even go with like even older, like this Canon 1D Mark II, which is a 20-year-old 8 megapixel camera that still takes amazing pictures. So when it comes to photography, honestly, what's really gonna matter is the lenses you choose, the lighting, the focal length, and if you're shooting people, for example, that you're posing, you're directly getting people in front of the camera, that's what's really gonna matter. So personally, I wouldn't worry about, you know, the image quality size of things with these cameras, because most of them do a great job. Now obviously, depending on the genre you shoot, it does matter the camera. Like for example, if you're taking pictures of fast moving subjects, such as if you're doing, you know, sports photography, if you're doing wildlife photography, or even if you're doing something like wedding photography where, you know, things are going on really fast, then obviously a better camera does help. And that's one of the reasons why I bought the A7 IV, is because I want to use it for weddings mainly. So that's what we're gonna get into. Now the main improvement over the A7R III is gonna be the autofocus. And the autofocus is something I'm gonna get more into when I make the video comparison between the A7R III and the A7 IV, because I think there's more improvements over there. But when it comes to photography, there's still a few improvements. First of all, just the regular autofocus is better. On the A7R III, I would say it pretty much like worked perfectly for like 90% of the time. But with the A7 IV, it pretty much feels like it works like 100% of the time. Like, I shot thousands of pictures with this camera, and pretty much every time the pictures are like perfectly in focus. Like, it just finds the eye, like as you can see, like even in video, it just perfectly finds the eye and just focuses on it, which, you know, makes it so that you don't have that worry in your head where you're like, oh, did I get that picture in focus or not? Because with this camera, it pretty much is always in focus. Another cool thing is that this camera has a tracking mode, and the thing is that the A7R III also has a tracking mode, but from my experience, the tracking mode never worked. Like, you would try to track something and it would just like go to something else, and I would try to focus on that, so I never bothered with it that much. But with the A7 IV, it actually works, so that's also great. And also the camera has what is called aperture drive mode, and that makes so that if you close down the aperture of the camera still focuses with the aperture open. So that means if you're shooting in a studio, for example, you're shooting at f8 or something, when you do that, your autofocus doesn't go to shit, it still works really well. So that thing is probably the biggest improvement over the A7R III. But the thing is that if you're already happy with your A7R III or the A7 III, where the autofocus already works perfectly for you, then you don't really need to upgrade for those stuff. This is the first Sony mirrorless camera that I use that actually feels good in the hand. Like, the original A7 camera just feels like complete like plastic garbage, and the A7R III, like, it feels high quality, but it's just too small in the hands. Like, your pinky comes out. That's why I always use this camera with a battery grip, just so that it feels bigger and better in the hands. But with the A7 IV, I don't even need a battery grip. The camera just, you know, feels good in the hands, so that's a huge plus about the camera. Another cool upgrade that the A7 IV has is that it has wireless tethering. So if you like shooting tethered, for example, you don't have to connect a cable to it. You can just download the, I believe it's called Imaging Edge Desktop. You can just download that application, and then you can just transfer your pictures to your computer wirelessly as you're shooting. So in my opinion, that's a huge improvement, because I hate shooting tethered just because I don't want to have a cable attached to my camera, and I have to like remember to bring the cable. It's just annoying. So that is another huge improvement. But anyways, guys, I don't want to make this video too long, so my final thoughts are going to be that when it comes to the image quality, it's pretty much the same shit. You get the same image quality out of the A7R III, so that's not really an improvement. When it comes to the autofocus, like, even though A7R III has really good autofocus, it does feel like a huge step up from this camera. But the thing is that if you're already getting good results out of the A7R III, then you don't have to worry about it too much. But in studio settings where, you know, you have to close down the aperture, that is a huge improvement compared to the A7R III. If you're interested in any of these cameras, there's affiliate links in the description below, so make sure to check that out. And I make videos every single week, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos I have. If you're interested in the A7 IV, that's the main focus of this channel right now. So make sure to subscribe, and that way you can learn more about the camera. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.